Okay, looks like we are streaming on Facebook, so I'll give about 30 seconds here to let everyone click on the page and join. Here we go.
It was nerve-wracking.
All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to our Facebook page, another episode of What's the Tea? My name is Zach. I'm a community educator at South Suburban Family Shelter. So if this is your first time clicking on the page, we do an interview every single Tuesday. We've been doing these at 2 o'clock, and we like to highlight different programs at South Suburban Family Shelter, just so everyone at home can get a little bit more information about the work that we do. So today we are lucky to have two guests, both from our partner abuse intervention program. So this is a 30-week program that helps people who have done abusive actions and behaviors in the past, and we try to help stop that cycle of violence. So I'd like to thank Ruben, our PAIP program manager, and Linda, a PAIP program facilitator, for coming on. So thank you both for being here.
You're welcome.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yep.
So if you might remember, Ruben did an episode earlier in the year about the program in general. So if you want some of that more general information about the program, you can click back on our Facebook page and the video will be there for you. Today, we want to talk a little bit more in detail about how this group is run and co-facilitating and everything. So I was maybe hoping to start with Linda. And if you could just, since this is your first time on the show, could you tell us how long you've been in the program and what made you want to do it?
Okay. So I started doing work with PAIP. I used to work for the social service department 100 years ago. And in 1990, I started with the domestic violence unit. So I've been involved in facilitating partner abuse groups since then. I started with South Suburban Family Shelter in December of 13. I looked it up, and I've been doing groups with this PAIP program since then. I also work around the same time with Center for Advancing Domestic Peace. That's a partner abuse program in the city. So I'm facilitating with them also. So I've been doing this a long time. And I got into the work, I was working as a probation officer, and I had always kind of been involved with some volunteer work, working with victims at some of the area agencies. And I just decided this would be a good shift, and I've never left. So it felt like it was important to do the work with the people who were doing the abuse. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And same question to you, Ruben. How long have you been doing this for, and what brought you to the work?
Yeah, it's also been a long time. I was doing substance abuse counseling, and then we were getting calls about a program for domestic violence. So then we decided to start the program. So actually, it was just like a business matter at the beginning, just to work with males who bother. Yeah. And that was back in 96. Yeah.
Awesome. So everyone at home, you hear it. We have some serious veterans in the program here today.
We started very young.
Very, right.
We were very,
And when partner abuse was very young too. They really didn't start doing that work until the early 90s, I think, late 80s, early 90s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember back then there was not part of the rule. Back then it was when the protocol was developed, right? The first set of guidelines about how to work with batteries and the program, what it was supposed to look like. So yeah, it was something new back then.
And so one major change is learning to facilitate these online with COVID-19. But since you were both at the towards the beginnings of this, were there any major changes that have happened since then with how you run the groups?
I think it's always been thought to be like what they thought to be psychoeducational, not a therapy group, that it really was about information and sharing information and educating, as opposed to looking at it as a mental health problem or a family problem. It was always putting the accountability on the men who were, mostly the men. The women's groups didn't come for a while. The men who were doing the abuse. So I think the model has always kind of been that way, to look at providing some kind of format. I think all the programs that have been approved have the same kind of male-female teams, focusing on accountability, victim safety, all those kinds of. I think those are the cornerstones, right, Ruben, of all the programs to be protocol approved.
Yeah.
I would say over the years, some of the things that we've learned, more emphasis on not looking at the difference between substance abuse, because I think early on there was a lot of belief that substance abuse was part of why people were being abusive. So there's been a lot of focus to keep those separate. And I think in the last several years, they've really looked at it, looking at the trauma, both the trauma of some of the participants, but also the trauma on children, the trauma on victims. So they've included more of that, I think, in some of the curriculums. So.
Yeah, I think at the beginning of these programs, people were using all kind of explanations to work with domestic violence, and it was until they developed this protocol when they put written that the program needed to do this and this and this. And so one of the things that is basic for these programs is the approach of that is something that men do to have power and control over partners. And so that's one of the basic points of these programs. Yeah, so even if we do it face-to-face or online, we keep asking men about those things of power and control.
Thank you. So that's very interesting. I don't want to go too far into that direction because I know you just stated that you have substance abuse experience right before you entered the PAIP program. So I'm sure there's lots of different angles, but it sounds like the most important thing is to focus on the power and control and the safety of the people around the person who was abusive.
Yeah. And keeping the accountability on the men. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, and I think, Linda, you started going into this direction. You started talking about co-facilitation, and every single PAIP group has one female and one male facilitator. So maybe start with you, Linda. Can you share a little bit on how do you go about facilitating with another person the best way?
Well, over the years, I think one of the most important things is to know that you and your partner are kind of on the same page. And even though in a perfect world, everyone's got understands the power and control and but you want to make sure that you're able to talk about that, what that means, how that gets played out, even between partners, that we all have our power and control needs. So how do we make a balance? How do we know that we're on the same page as far as attitudes and beliefs about men and women, and kind of, you have implicit kind of biases that you don't even realize you have. And I think it's to make sure that you and your partner can talk about things, conflicts that come up, disagreements in the group, how you work that out in the group or how you process it after the group. I think that's to make sure your communication is good with your co-facilitator. And it's a trial and error thing sometimes. I think that's, like any partnership, what's working, what's not working. being able to talk about that. So did that answer? Did that help?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that what Linda mentioned is about the communication, about just knowing the materials and knowing sometimes even the style of your facilitator, your co-facilitator is very important. So the ideal situation is to talk before the group, knowing what happened last group, if we have some things pending from the last group, and then how we're going to approach the actual group, the current group. And so I think that's at the beginning of, before the group starts, that's what we do.
And so I've heard a little bit just talking with people who have facilitated in this program, that sometimes clients can try to um, maybe drive a wedge in between the co-facilitators or gain back some of that power and control. So how do you, what approaches do you have for dealing with clients that are resistant to the group?
Okay.
Go ahead.
So I think
Oops, that was
part of
nice.
it is can I talk? I'll talk about the resistance first, and then we can talk about the wedge.
Yes.
I think one thing is to recognize that very, very few people know. Most of our clients are court mandated. So, in addition to not wanting to be there in the first place, they oftentimes don't feel like they've done anything wrong, and so they're coming in with a lot of resistance just from that, not only about the feeling maybe that they didn't get a fair shake, or doing a lot of blaming, victim blaming and system blaming. So they come in not happy campers to start with, and then also not even, so that they're not wanting to be there. They're not there as voluntary clients. So I think you have that resistance. And then oftentimes, then I think in terms of the wedge, and we'll probably talk more about this too, but the wedge question, I think sometimes they come in, if they have attitudes about women, or they feel like they're going to be judged by us, or they have an ally with the male co-facilitator, that they can sometimes play off of that, try to play us off each other, or not take, say, for instance, what I'm saying as seriously as they might take what Ruben says. So we have to be careful of that. I think with all clients, anyway come in with some resistance. I mean, who wants to change? We all want to believe that we're doing things fine and it's not really our problem. So trying to find ways, and Ruben used a really neat word of style. So sometimes finding what style works with different clients. If you have co-facilitators that are tuned in, what's going to work better with one client than another, or how to address the resistance, letting them know what we're there for, what our roles are, that we're there to look at their behavior, trying to focus in on their strengths as well as their problem areas. So I think that can help lessen some of the resistance. As far as the wedge part goes, that sometimes is a week-to-week kind of a challenge with different clients, or the same client week to week might be fine and then might take some offense at something that somebody says, or what one of us tries to do versus the other.
Mm. And I think that this part about different reaction or different communication with the male facilitator and the woman that is facilitating, I think it is not to disrupt the process, or to put a wedge, but it is part of their way of interacting with men and women. I think that they come with that idea of men are a little bit more better than women, and so they have more authority, and I can interrupt the woman that is talking, the facilitator, because I is a woman, and I can just say my opinion. So this thing about mansplaining and man interrupting, man interrupting, something like that. It is what they do. I mean, they are used to ignore or interrupt women, and when they are in the group, they do the same. They give the man more respect, more authority, and they tend to interrupt or to ignore the woman that is facilitating. So I think that's part of the socialization of these men, and of course this culture.
Thank you for unpacking that. I think from an outside, I ask a question and then you have all the experience and you see there's really different angles to it. So for you, Ruben, if you have a male participant and they're talking over Linda, for example, how do you what's your approach? Do you step back or what do you do?
Usually, I my tell him. So, did you see what you did? Have you Are you paying attention about your conversation with me and with Linda? Um, Sometimes they say no. Sometimes, if he says no, for example, I might ask the other people in the group. So, what did he do? Did you notice something that he did when he was talking to Linda, when Linda was talking? And then, yeah, they might say, yes, he interrupted her. And then, yeah, that's what you are doing. And that's part of the benefits of being in a group when there is a woman, that we can see your interaction with women. And we can talk about um, why we are acting as men, we are acting like that with women. So I might then, so the approach for me is call his attention to see if he was able to see how I was interrupting, getting the feedback from other participants. If they do not see that, then it's up to us just telling, yeah, you are interrupting her. You are and doing that more often to her than to me. So that's the way we approach that.
And maybe for Linda, if you're facilitating a female group and someone keeps interrupting Ruben, they're saying, well, you know how men are, or something along those lines. This is, um, do you take the similar approach as Ruben with that and um, ask them to see what they're doing and maybe asking another group member to help out?
You mean with a group of one of our women's groups?
Yes.
Yeah, actually, I haven't run a women's group in a real long time. And so I haven't noticed that same kind of behavior too much. I think when I came in, I was substituting, and so the women already had a connection with the male co-facilitator, so it was a little bit different dynamic. So yeah, that's an interesting question, though. That would, yeah, I guess Ruben might, because I know Ruben, you were leading the women, you were co-facilitating the women's group, right? With
Yeah, I was doing that. Yeah, the dynamics are different, and in the groups we have women that have used violence, but sometimes they didn't use it with the same intent that men. So we know that in our most of our clients, if not all, they were using some behaviors to control their partners. They were using all of that, interrupting, putting her down, insulting, or using other things to control her. So for women, sometimes when they use violence, that was sometimes a reaction because of what was happening. Sometimes it was just the aggression that they had, but the intent to control or to have power over him is not as the same as in men. Yeah. So it is a different dynamic, and yeah, also types of personalities, I guess, or socialization. What I've seen is that women in groups, they like to talk, they have a good conversations and about the topic or and about other things, and while with men sometimes we need to kind of work a little bit more to have them engage and talking about yeah.
Very interesting on these two different dynamics.
Yeah.
I'm learning a lot already from this segment. So
I will say one real quick thing. One of the things that I've always noticed over the years, even back at social service, women were always more open about the kind of violence that they did. Like they were much more willing to talk about, whereas a lot of times the men, there's more minimizing, there's more blaming. The women may rationalize and justify, but they would kind of just share, yes, I did this. Whereas for men, sometimes it's a lot harder. They won't necessarily own up to things, or it takes a lot longer to own up to behaviors. So there's more of a resistance to that.
So based on that, because I run in the past the Bro group with boys in junior high. So what techniques do you use when the group is just quiet, just very short with their answers? How do you get them involved a little bit more?
Well, asking questions. I think I like to ask a lot of questions, and if I can get someone to, if they don't want to talk about things, or they're being really closed about some of their behaviors, what I like to do is go back and rewind the tape. So they'll talk about something and then say, okay, what happened before that? And what were you thinking, or what were you feeling? So to get them to talk about a situation, not from the end part, but more to help them understand that it was a process, or there were choice points along the way, and getting them to recognize, because a lot of people want to believe they go from something that's happening to a behavior. Well, I snapped, and that's a big phrase. And so looking at, okay, let's talk about what was going on in all those places before you made a choice to hit somebody. And sometimes it's successful. Sometimes if depending on the client, how resistant they are to being there, how defensive they are about their behaviors, how angry they might be. So one of the things when Ruben and I were talking earlier, something that you can rely on the group. So sometimes the members who have been there longer will be good help in helping challenge the men, or getting them to open up, or getting them to share. Or when they do their own sharing about some things, sometimes it makes it easier for newer members to open up. So one of the things about facilitation is how to use the group to help facilitate, so the work's not all on us. I think that comes in handy too. So
we have, for our groups, we have a check-in. So that's a series of questions at the beginning of the group that we ask them how they feeling, and sometimes men are going to, and we do not accept short answers like I'm okay, I'm fine, or yeah, or I'm great. We want them to name a feeling, so we want them to say I'm happy, I'm glad, I'm sad, I'm frustrated, whatever. And when sometimes they have a list of those words for feelings. So we just take notes, and then if there is a moment when there is no, the conversation is not, or we finish talking about something, we might say, okay, let's go back to, at the beginning you said that you were feeling frustrated. Can you tell us more about it? So we have now something to talk about. Oh, but I was also thinking in your case that sometimes sharing a story and getting feedback might help. Sometimes in some groups, all of a sudden, sometimes we, the facilitators, we just we are thinking, okay, what's next? And then we don't have that idea about following sometimes, I guess. And what I have done sometimes is, okay, I have this, this, and then I tell them situation where there was some kind of abuse, and I explain, okay, this man, this is what he did, and then I explain the situation. I tell them the story, and then I ask for the feedback. So tell us, what do you think about it? Was there abuse? What kind of abuse? What's the other way to approach this? And then we have some people that might volunteer their opinions. So yeah, we use some stories in the program. We have vignettes that are short stories, short episodes of abuse, and it's more or less, but the vignettes are videos, short videos.
Awesome. Getting lots of good ideas from all that. So I want to ask just one more question before we go to the Facebook questions, see if anyone who was watching had any questions. So I'll start with Ruben, and it'll be the same question for you as well, Linda. And just
Okay.
generally speaking, what do you find most meaningful about the work that you do?
I think one is to try to change something that this society have bad. That I think I see my job as contributing to the benefit of the society and um, stopping the violence. So that's part of why I keep doing this. Also, it's very rewarding to see some men that get it, that they are able to see why they were abusive, to name other types of abuse that they have used with partners, that they are able to talk, to bring some things from their past that uh, in other situations they wouldn't bring. So they admit they take a responsibility for their abusive behaviors, uh, uh, behaviors that affected partners, and they are able to even challenge other men in the group. So sometimes we have those, well, I think very often we have those men who get it, and um, uh, they are able to admit to their responsibility, and also show some kind of change and willingness to challenge other people.
Thank you,
So,
Linda.
so
So,
what's
what do you
meaningful?
find most
Yeah,
meaningful?
I think probably a lot of what Ruben said. I think, there are days when it feels so overwhelming because nobody, how can I say this? There's so many layers of why people make the choices that they make. And there's so much to uncover, attitudes and beliefs, and even recognizing that it's not an automatic response. And so when somebody gets it, like Ruben said, when somebody understands that, I think people know the obvious. Most people know that physical violence is what that is. But when they can start to look at all the different forms of non-physical violence, the name calling and just things that are such common behaviors for many of our men, they don't even realize that that's abusive. So when they can start to look at some of those things and then recognizing that they have a choice, that they're not bound by it. When those kinds of things happen, that's what makes it worthwhile to go in week after week, because some of the stuff that we hear in the groups and some of what you hear going on the outside and the behaviors that are just accepted as as normal behavior or being man or what, all that kind of stuff. When you can see men in the group kind of question themselves and untangle some of the things that they believed and know that they have other options, that's kind of what helps me go back, because it can be overwhelming to hear some of the things that the men in our group talk about, and the attitudes and beliefs. And sometimes it feels like such an uphill climb week after week. But when that goes off, when some light bulb goes off, or they recognize all that they've been doing, and when they realize that they need to change for their children, that's another thing that makes it meaningful. When they start to look at the patterns that they're doing and what they want to break for their kids, that makes it worthwhile. So
if I can share this, Zach, there was in one of the groups, there was a man who, when we were talking about this other unfair behavior that men have with their partners, he mentioned this. He talked about that one day he went to a bar with some friends and his girlfriend. So he said, so we were playing pool, and then I saw a woman that I knew that I was interested in her. So I told my girlfriend, I'll be right back. I'm going to restroom and maybe get some drinks. So, but I went to talk to this woman, and then I was talking to her for a while, getting her number and doing plans, and then uh, he said, and I now realize that I was abusive, even if if my girlfriend never found out that I was talking to that woman, even if I was not abusive. I was betraying the relationship. I was not acting fair in that relationship. And I understand that that was not okay. So as when somebody is able to extrapolate all what we're saying to some situations, then it's when we feel that we are doing something, that our work is helping some men.
Yeah, and I was fortunate enough to see it when I was looking in on a group. It was a member's final week of the 30 weeks, and he had written a letter and was explaining the progress made. And thank you for both of you for highlighting just the layers to beyond physical abuse and recognizing just how many steps there are on the way there. So I think from there we can go to the questions. So Celeste, can you let us know if we have any questions?
Yes, we do have a couple of questions. So the first one that I see here, we covered a little bit, but if we have anything else to say, the question is, what does each of you value in a co-facilitation partner?
Okay.
To me is to understand some things that I was blind to. I remember one of the facilitators many years ago, and it was a Latina, Hispanic woman, and then it was a group in Spanish, and she was saying, uh, the way men are affects even when we are not living with them. She's saying, because if I'm walking on this sidewalk and I see a group of men at the corner, what I'm going to do probably is I'm going to go to the other sidewalk, because I am afraid of people bothering me, harassing me, saying things that are bad. And, and, and I was thinking, well, that's something that was never in my mind about other things that women need to do because of the way men are. So to me, working with women has been also understanding more about how they see the world and how they suffer from the aggressiveness and the machismo that we have in this society, patriarchal society.
And Linda, what do you value in a co-facilitator?
Well, I think that when I feel like I can really, if something's, what I value is being able to say what I'm feeling, especially after a group. If there's been something that's been difficult, knowing that I can share with it, even if it's going to make the other person uncomfortable, that at least we're going to be able to kind of talk about it. And that I can also feel comfortable talking about my mistakes, because I know during the course of a group, oftentimes I can get angry, or I can get frustrated, and then being able to talk about what that was all about, what was my stuff, what might have been the group stuff, and what might be my issue with the co-facilitator, being able to hash all that out. So you have to trust somebody to be able to do that. So.
Yeah, and if I can add something, I think the benefits also is that you have somebody that has maybe a different take, a different opinion, or understanding of what's going on. And I think in at least one situation, I was ready to ask somebody to leave the group because of the things that he was saying. And then and then Linda kind of stopped me, kind of said, okay, let's process this a little bit more. But, and I think that at the end it was beneficial for that man. So I hope, at least I hope that he got something out of that. But I was ready to put him out of the group, and Linda helped me to deal with the situation at that moment.
Thank you. Okay, Celeste, any more questions?
Yeah, and I think Zach and I can relate a little bit to what Ruben and Linda are saying. When we do present in classrooms, we also see how it's an advantage to have two facilitators and two different perspectives.
Yeah.
So we have two more questions so far. This question is about last week's episode, Zach. So in last week's What's the Tea episode, we heard Mitch discuss external and internal motivation of the young men in the group. Can you speak to those issues in our partner abuser intervention program?
Oh, external and internal motivation?
Yes. So how does that apply to PAIP as well?
So I'm trying to understand a little bit more about the question. I believe I'm trying to think back to the conversation we had about Brew. So external motivation, so being motivated by things from other people, like other people in the group. Maybe you're motivated to impress them versus you've got that internal desire maybe that a participant gets throughout the group. So
I think initially this is, and I think many people who come into our groups are motivated, if I understand the idea correctly, from the outside. It's the courts that's driving them there. It's not necessarily someone coming in and saying, I mean, every once in a while, someone will come in and say, yeah, I realize I have a problem. And if I hadn't been arrested, this is maybe the best thing that happened because it made me look at my behavior. But I would say that's probably not when most people come in. But hopefully within a few groups, they start to recognize, like one of the things we do early on is ask them to just name all the things that they've done off a checklist. And sometimes looking at all the behaviors that they've done, it something clicks that this isn't right. And then the internal motivation, I think, kicks in, wanting to change their behavior, look at their behavior, even if they still feel justified in some way, that they know something is wrong. And then when that happens, then they've got more investment in looking, as opposed to, and then there are people who never get that they're just going to finish the groups because the court's telling me to do this, and they never make that switch. But I think hopefully, we do see that with people after a few weeks a lot of times.
And we also can see that in with the people that are mandated versus those that come voluntarily to the group. So having that extrinsic pressure from the outside, it is uh, I think helps them to stay in the group and to be there until they understand what the benefits of the program. So some of the men that come voluntarily, because I said quotation marks because usually they come because their partner is putting pressure on them because she left or she's threatening in leaving. So they are there until more or less the situation gets better for them at home or it's ended. So they stop coming. So they don't have enough time to develop that understanding from inside, that motivation from the inside to stay in the group and to keep working and learning. So yeah, that's bad that in most of these programs, I think there are a couple of programs in Chicago maybe that are more successful with volunteers, but in my experience, it's volunteers usually don't complete the program.
That was very clarifying, especially with the bro groups. We don't have that as much external motivation because I guess the underlying secret behind the group is if they, their parents signed the permission form, but if they really pushed it, they could probably go back to class and there's not much we could do about it.
Yeah.
So thank you both for clarifying the two different motivations there. So I think we've got one more question, Celeste.
Yeah, one more question so far. And the person who did ask this last question that was already answered said that you hit the answer right, exactly what she was looking for. So thanks for that. So we have one more question. It says, what supports you in the uphill climb of this work? So what supports you professionally and personally while you're doing this program?
Boy.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yes. What supports you in the uphill climb of this work? So professionally and personally, so what makes you get better at your job?
Well, I think conversations with other facilitators, either at staff meetings or that can be knowing that you're not alone in the work sometimes. The other thing is there's a lot out there as far as work that's being done in the broader community, research and other programs and other things that people are trying that seem to work with clients. That can always be a good plus for me to know what other people are doing, what's working, what we can try differently, and that's helpful. And the fact that there are so many people out there still doing this work, that there's, a real commitment to looking at violence against women and where the work needs to happen is with men. And so what do we have to do to make that happen? In spite of sometimes, not to get political, but in spite of what's out there in the larger culture that just seems to reinforce bad behavior by men. So it's like, you gotta find your support someplace, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it is, to me, it's important to read and be in contact with, read about about the subject and try to understand and try to maybe have better ideas about how to work in groups. So it's something that we do. I think with Linda is, okay, how about if we do this? And then how about if we have different check-in questions? How about if we do this later? So it is, the support is coming from other professionals and I think other people around us. And as Linda said, the motivation also is that, yeah, we're doing something, but still we can see that the alpha male idea is still very strong out there, and that we need to just raise our voice and say, no, that's not how men are supposed to be. We, as men, we can behave in a different way, more egalitarian, more fair manner.
Awesome. So Celeste, is that the final question there?
Yeah, no more questions so far, Zach.
Okay.
You can take it from.
All right. Thank you, Celeste. So I just want to give you both the opportunity. We talked about so many different things, but if there was anything left unsaid that you want to mention, it could be about anything. Start with you, Linda, if there's anything.
No, I think that's good. I think, yeah, no, that's good. Let people know what we do. I will say way back in the beginning when I started doing this work, there was a lot of ideas about working with men and the problems with that. And I think over the years, PAIP programs have really worked to make sure that people know that victim safety is foremost and offender accountability is up there, but that I think there's still some misperceptions, and I think it's important to know that you know, we try to work really hard not to give anybody any slack or make any excuses for the violence they do against their victims, so against the women.
And I think it's important to remember that what we do, it is keeping in mind that there are victims of these men, that we might be future victims of these men. So even if we are working with these men in the group, we know that the victim was in the past, and there might be some other victims in the future for this man if he doesn't work. So we we're trying to understand where the man is coming from, but also understand our responsibility to try to teach him something and to bring him some understanding of this, so he stop his violence. And so that's I think that's the easiest part of just talking about stopping violence. What we do and goes beyond is to change their beliefs about men, about women, about what is respectful. And I hope that in this coming 4 years, we are going to have a better help from the society to work with men to stop violence.
Well, I think this was a great conversation that maybe we can jumpstart this before January comes up. But I'd like to thank you all both for coming on and really just getting into some of the finer details and the layers of the work that you do. So thank you again.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Questions, thanks.
All right.
Thank you, Celeste. And thanks to everyone that was listening and engaging with the conversation today. So make sure you do like our page, share it with everyone, and feel free to leave some comments. We'll be back next Tuesday at 2 o'clock, same place, same time, different tea, different conversation. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.